Hi babes, welcome back to the content for this look. For some drama, popping in one contact. I love freckles, so freckles are going on. Whenever I feel like I'm missing something, I add freckles. It just makes it better. I don't know what it is, but it works. I got some on my lids, but that's okay. I'm going to remove that, let it dry down a little bit, and then I'm going to tap where it's wet, then tap random parts of my face so it looks more organic. Then I'm using my sponge to lightly go over to add more variation to the tones of these freckles, making it look more natural. Now some eye primer, be generous with this and tap it all over your lids. One of the hottest palettes ever, Huda Pretty Grunge. I picked up the shade Liberty, very light brown, to shade and map out basically the outline of where that shadow is going to go on the eyes. I used a medium flat, but still kind of fluffy brush to shade. This will give you a nice feel of where it'll go, and you'll get to see how it'll be on your unique eye shape, while also warming up your hands. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Take your time and adjust the evenness if needed. White water activated liner. Start mapping and dotting that design slowly. When mapping your design, pay attention to the spaces in between. How curved a certain line will be. Does it start at the inner corner of your eye? Does it end at the beginning of your brow or past it? Don't just think about where you're drawing, think about the surrounding areas and how much space it's going to take up. And constantly look back at the reference for guidance. Also work at a section at a time instead of looking at the entire picture to avoid being overwhelmed. It's a good idea to step back and look in the mirror after each section just to check how it looks like in proportion to your face. If you make a mistake, you can let it dry and lightly brush it off in a circular motion with a spoolie, or wet the brush again with just water to remove some dots. I decided to add some blush before drawing more because I know once that white is on, I can't add blush because it'll just turn it pink. Now start sketching out the design. I'm using very little motion because it's such a small area to work with. I'm resting my chin on the palm of my hand for more control and using my wrist for small movements. Also hold the handle closest to the bristles for maximum control. You can switch from your chin on your palm for control to using your pinky to rest onto your face for control while you're holding the brush, or any movement you find comfortable to get those lines down. Use minimal product and more water to dilute that pigment. It's easier to remove, and because you're just lightly sketching, that sheer liner is less intimidating. You can make the roundness of these lines more round, more elongated, more sharp, whatever you like. I like to use these sharpened Q-tips for a more sharp cleanup. Now I'm slowly playing around with how long, sharp, skinny, or thick I want these lines. You always want to start out with thin lines and thicken as you go. The line at my outer corner starts short, then slowly fans out as it takes a little U-turn down my cheek. Pay attention to those little U's that you're drawing, especially the length. You want this area to hug your cheekbones. After that, go to the starting point again and add in some details, and begin cleaning up the design. Since the lines were so faint, I took this chance to add even more blush because girl's looking a little pale. Now let's add more pigment to these bones. Try on the back of your hand how thick or thin you want these lines. Lesson is to learn pressure and control. Do you want to go in lightly, more heavy-handed, more thick on one stroke and thin on another? Do you want to flick the brush or draw slowly? It takes time, and I remember I was so bad at graphic liner, so it takes practice. Each mistake you make turns into a lesson, and I promise you'll stop getting frustrated and inspired instead. Be super patient with yourself. Give yourself all the grace. Like me, I always make mistakes like this. I really shouldn't rush. We should not rush. It got a little messy, but it's okay. Even if you mess up, it's just practice, and we never regret practice because it's always progress. Now for the shading magic. I picked up the shade Hope, just very lightly and with a short, flat, compact, rounded brush. I'm going in between those whites. So we're going in between every single one of those little U's, and we'll fill those little U's. I hope that makes sense. It's like the letter U or the letter N, depending on how you're looking at it, but it's just like a bunch of N's or U's around the cheek. This is my favorite part with a right brush. It's so satisfying because it fits right into those little U's, those little scoops. It's okay if you get some on the white. We'll be going over it again afterwards. Start blending that shade out with a light hand. Slowly adding in more of that brown if needed. Go in between every one of those scoops, those ends, those U's to make sure they're shaded in. Once that's done, it's first round of shading. We'll move to the lids and do the same thing. While we're here, we can use a shadow to clean up those white lines. Act as if the shadow is actually concealer. You know the approach for cut crease? Same idea, except we're cleaning up the lines and sharpening them with the shadow. Act as though the shadow is concealer. Leave a little space in the middle for some highlight later. For the outer corner shading, I started off doing that little circle, but realized this area doesn't need the highlight, but you could add it if you want to. If not, just fill in the entire thing instead with a short, compact brush. This is actually a really cheap nail brush, and I love using this for concealer. For very small, tight work, it gives the sharpest lines and picks up the most even pigment. I realized I wanted the ends more elongated and sharp, so I started shaping the white lines with the shadow, like I mentioned earlier, acting as though it is concealer. At the very front, I'm hugging that white with the brown shadow. Just very lightly, it's tapering off as it's moving inwards. It stops right before the curve. Then I'm filling in that inner corner, making sure that line lines up with the one I just drew before, as if it's like a continuation. That shadow is just flowing behind those two white lines. Under that inner corner, we're moving the opposite direction, so it doesn't stop bluntly. It's not the continuation. Shade it in as you did with the ends, the U's, the scoops, and clean as you go with a sharp Q-tip. Right here, you can see what I mean with cleaning up that white liner. I want this area to match with the outer corner, focusing real tight and covering up that specific white spot. Now we're deepening those shadows so that it fades out. I picked up a little of Renegade in the palette and using another short rounded brush to shade, this time a little fluffier to help with blending. Switch back and forth what's needed. If you need more direct, super sharp pigment, the super compact, flat round brush, and if you need to softly blend out the edges, the fluffier one. Start by adding very little black shadow. A little goes a long way with deep shadows. Start at the very beginning, right up that curve on that U, that N, and that scoop. This makes sure that it goes from dark to light and fades out properly. Move down the line and do the exact same thing for all the others. That shadow for each one is going to drag lightly past outside those lines. And when blending, it's normal for the dark parts to fade as you're blending. That's why we go back, deepen it, and repeat blend as many times as needed to build up that pigment. With my finger, I'm picking up a white shadow and lightly dabbing that in the middle of that space we left alone. If it gets too white, take a small brush and blend that dark shadow into the white very, very lightly and in small sweeps. Also taking that white shadow and adding that at the inner curve right above the cheekbone, blending by tapping as it fades into that liner. Now for more detailing and to make those white lines sharp again, go over them with white liner once again. If the white liner gets patchy or skips, go over it with dark shadow and just clean it up again, only when it's completely dry. You can see that I added that middle line again, but I regret it, so I'm gonna remove it. I'm trying my best to keep these lines here thin, but sometimes my brush just misbehaves. At the very end here, drag that white line downwards. Now breathe. We made it. For intense highlight, super underrated brand from one of my favorite drag queens, Kimchi Chic. I'm adding this to the bridge of my nose, to the tip, and underneath the arch of my brow with my pinky. Layering it on. For bottom mascara, D&G Devotion mascara, moving back and forth, turning the wand vertical, horizontal, and just coating all the lashes with the tip. For falsies, Noir Fairy from House of Lashes. Even though I can see my texture, I just have to apply the highlighter to my cheekbones. You'll see why at the very end. You know what's a sexy lip liner? Grage from MAC. It's like Stone's little sister. For that nude, I'm applying Flesh Pot from MAC, layering, then dabbing to blend, repeat, repeat. And to add some gloss, Half Magic Beauty. This is such a Y2K shade. And there we have it, my baddies. Our look is served.